Hello there. Welcome back to Who Gives a Dram. Feels good to say that. I'm going to try recording this again. I just recorded an entire episode, and then when I went to my phone to look at the video to make sure it looked okay, only like half of it recorded. So this is the pain of doing this all by myself. Nevertheless, we are going to just jump right back in and do this again. And hopefully it works this time around. If it doesn't, then we'll do it again because it's Who Gives a Dram. We have to make sure that it's done correctly. But nevertheless, it feels fantastic to have a microphone in front of me, my phone on my tripod, my laptop out with GarageBand opened, and saying, welcome back to Who Gives a Dram. I feel like it's been entirely too long to not have said those words, but it is for good reason, and we'll get more into that. And I do want to say that first and foremost, I apologize if I'm all red all over my face and skin. I have been outside the past few days, specifically Mother's Day, which is a few days ago, and I worked all day. And, you know, your boy wants to get tan for sure. But so I was working out all day with my shirt off. And, I just got burnt. And I'm Irish and Scottish, so I don't have like this beautiful golden brown skin. I burn, but it will tan. So I got to deal with the in-between right now as my base layer sets in, as my sister says. You got to let the base layer of the burn set in, and then it will tan. So hopefully she's right. I don't know. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you will notice that this is a much different setup than I have had in my past episodes. And that is because at the end of last year, my brother moved in with me, Kale. And he needed a room to sleep in, and he wasn't going to sleep in my room with me. And he wasn't going to sleep in the living room, so I had to give up my podcast studio /office /whiskey room. And now I'm recording in the living room until we get a studio set up, which hopefully will be soon. Hopefully our content guy, Caleb Sylvia, shout out, will have his apartment ready soon, and we can record the podcast from there, which will be great. But for right now, I'm in the living room, and as you can see behind me, bottles of McTavish line the mantle. And this is the first thing people see when they walk in through the front door. They see how much of an alcoholic both Kale and I both am, but that's okay. I've also got the windows open right next to me if you're watching this on YouTube. So if there's a bunch of shadows coming back and forth, it's because it's a little windy outside and the windows are open and the curtains are blowing in the breeze. So all of that out of the way, new setup, new location. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've got a pretty bad sunburn right now, and it's a beautiful day outside. And it's a beautiful day because we're recording Who Gives a Dram, and it's been a minute. Although I just recorded an entire episode and it got deleted more or less, so that's okay. But we'll go from there. So I want to record this episode and kind of just let you guys know what I've been up to and what's been going on in my life. A very, very brief recap. I do have some of my whiskey here, the Warchief, that I do want to pour a little bit and give it a slight review and kind of talk about the Warchief as I sip it, and then kind of talk about the direction the podcast is going to go in. The way I see it as we move forward. So lots of things to talk about, not a lot of time to talk about them. First and foremost, I want to say that I started a whiskey company. So that's the reason I haven't been recording. I started a whiskey company. McTavish Spirits is the name of said whiskey company. And for those of you that don't know, I started the whiskey company with a guy named Graham McTavish, who's an actor in Hollywood. And he's in things like Outlander and The Hobbit and House of the Dragon and The Witcher and a bunch of different things. Actually, my favorite role of Graham's is in the 2008 Rambo movie. I think his character is called the Boatman or something like that. But anyways, that was before he had a beard, or at least at the time, Graham didn't have a beard, and that's my favorite Rambo movie. So really like that movie a lot. But that is what I've been up to the past several years now. And I know I've recorded a few episodes, and we've kind of talked about what I've been doing. I honestly don't even remember the last time I recorded an episode. I could probably search it if I just pull up Spotify. Let me check it real quick. When was the last time we did an episode? Don't care what's new on Chrome. Spotify, web player. Because the last few episodes we've done have not been video podcasts, but now I'm doing the video again because I like doing the video and I want to upload to YouTube. But according to Spotify, the last time I recorded was June 11, 2024, so almost a year to the date. Yeah, June 5th and then June 11th, and then I haven't recorded since then. So June 11th, 2024 was the last time that we recorded something, and that's crazy. That was 11 months ago, almost a year ago. Today is May 13th as I'm recording this, and a lot has happened in that year. I don't remember what I talked about on that episode, but we're just going to get into what I've been doing, and we'll get right into it. McTavish Spirits. We released our inaugural whiskey, which is the Warchief right here in August 2023. Since then, we have two other releases as well. We did a batch 1 rye whiskey that we sourced from Green River Distillery in Owensboro, Kentucky called The Keeper. And our most recent release was something that we dropped in October of last year that was fairly allocated, called Legacy Series, and it was the first edition. It was Legacy Series 1, Hope and Honor. Hope and Honor are the names of Graham's two daughters, so it was in honor of them, and it was a blend that we did of 6 and 7 year bourbons finished in peated Scotch casks. So it was kind of honoring our tagline, A Scotsman's Dream of America, honoring Graham's heritage of being Scottish and so on and so forth. So that it's been busy. That was our big thing last year, as well as doing another run of the Warchief. And 2024 was filled with traveling for me. I traveled all the time, working on expanding our market share in the markets that we're in. We opened a few new states, and we attended a few events, and we did a Make It McTavish tour at the end of the year with Graham. That was super successful in 3 different states within like a week's time frame. Just a busy year last year. We had a slow start to the year. We had to fix some things internally, and then we really, once we had our feet underneath us, we made sure that our we were getting out to the markets that were selling our product. So I was really, really happy with 2024, the way it ended. And now it's 2025, and we are halfway through the year already, which is bonkers. It's absolutely bonkers to me that it's almost June. And this year has been a lot of the same. I've been traveling quite a bit. We're just about ready to announce a new state for distribution. Maybe the only state that we opened this year, not too sure yet. I can't say it right now because I don't know when I'm going to release this episode, and I also don't know when I'm going to sign the contract with said state, but I'm hoping it's today. That'd be nice. Or tomorrow at the very latest. So it's we've got new products that we're working on. We've got new markets that we're eyeing. We've got events that we want to get to. We've got Highland Games that both Graham and I are attending this year, so we're going to be doing some traveling this summer. Lots of positive momentum. But if I wanted to take it all the way back to the beginning for the people that haven't heard this story yet, the idea of McTavish Spirits, which was never going to be called McTavish Spirits, by the way, was presented to Graham And when we presented our idea to Graham, he was all on board from the moment we even gave him a little bit of a pitch. And then we all met over a Zoom call. This was early 2023. And again, kind of gave a more detailed approach of what we wanted to do as a company, what we thought the correct process was, and Graham agreed and gave his ideas. And the only thing that I asked was, Graham, I just would like for you to be involved in this. I don't want to do something where, we're just slapping a label on and calling it a day. I want there to be authenticity behind this brand and integrity and honesty and transparency, and I want to do this the right way. I'm not saying I know exactly how to do that, but I want to do our best in doing that. And Graham was like, I wouldn't have it any other way, which is when I knew that this was going to be a very fun adventure. And it's been very fun. We spent about 6 months between, let's say, March 2023 and August 2023 building the company. We weren't going to do McTavish Spirits at first. We were bouncing around ideas, and Graham, selfishly enough, was the one who suggested McTavish. But it was the right thing to do, and it was honestly genius on his part, because we were thinking we didn't want, or at least Graham didn't want to he didn't want it to be named McTavish, because again, he didn't want it to seem like a vanity thing. But when you think of the name McTavish, and it exudes a power and an elegance that I think represents our brand to a T. I mean, at the end of the day, this is Graham's name on a bottle that, we want to reflect the shared values of both him and what I like as well in terms of how we operate. And knock on wood, well, there's no knock on wood, but just thankfully, that's the word I meant to say. Thankfully, Graham and I share a lot of the same values. I would say mostly all of the same values in terms of how we operate as men and our day-to-day lives, and the approach we have to business and things of that nature. We are on the same wavelength entirely, and I'm very thankful for that too. So I will say that at first it wasn't going to be called McTavish, and then Graham suggested McTavish, and then we kind of had an idea of McTavish Spirits and what we were going to do, and we were at the same time building out not only the brand identity but the whiskey itself, like what is actually in the bottle of the Warchief, which was not even called the Warchief at the time. We were just, what are we going to do first? And we had several months of R&D, research and development, more or less sampling of different whiskeys, and we did everything. We sampled whiskeys at different mash bills and ages and proofs from a dozen or more distilleries, and we spent our time figuring out each other's palates and what we wanted to do. Helping Graham kind of navigate what he was tasting, because at the time he didn't really know how to verbalize it. Now I think he's an expert, but at the time he needed help verbalizing and kind of pulling things out that maybe he just didn't know was there. And throughout the process, at some point we had learned that no other celebrity brand, and I quote celebrity because we don't necessarily like to use that term, but it's the reality, but no other celebrity brand had done a bottle of the bond whiskey at that time. And this was, again, 2023, mid 2023 maybe. So we basically just thought to ourselves, all right, well, no one else has done it. Let's do it ourselves. And we ended up having this beautiful 7-year sample of 21% rye MGP juice right in front of us. Specific lot number. We had all the specs on it. We sampled it. We brought it down to what we thought was around 100 proof, and we just knew right then and there, this is it. once we found out that bond of the bond aspect, and we knew we wanted to go that route, it made it a lot easier to decide, and we decided to go with the 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley mash bill from MGP in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. And we are very, very, very happy and proud that is the liquid that composes the Warchief. And the reasoning for the name the Warchief should go without saying. Graham played a character in a show called Outlander called Dougal Mackenzie, who is the Warchief of Clan Mackenzie. And to kind of bring it back to the brand itself, what we wanted to do was we wanted the brand to stand out in terms of the branding, not just the whiskey, but how we presented ourselves to the public. And I look at Graham and I see what I call bold elegance. And the best way I can kind of personify that with an experience I have of Graham is, Graham lives in the United Kingdom, and he was showing me a picture of a new truck that he bought. This was maybe a year ago or maybe even more. And it was this big-ass truck that you would rarely see in the United Kingdom. I'm talking like Ford Raptor type, like lifted, the whole 9 yards. And it's funny picturing Graham driving something like that. And if you've never been to the UK, then you wouldn't know that the roads are tiny over in the United Kingdom. So just big truck in like an old English countryside on dirt roads, with these little cars passing. It made me laugh. But Graham took a picture of his truck in front of his beautiful home, which is like in the countryside, and I want to say it's like a stone. I don't know. It's very, very. It's a beautiful house, and I could only see the front of it from where the truck was parked on the outside, but it just screamed like exactly what I think of Graham, which is this bold, brash truck. Because Graham, again, is not a small human being, so he's 6'2", 6'3", wide guy, and he's got the bald head and the grizzly beard, so he's very bald and brawny almost, but he's got this absolute elegance to him, and so did his home in that picture, and it just screamed what we kind of look for with McTavish, with that bold elegance. And that's what I propose we translate to the bottle. And we worked through with our designer, Emma Quinn, who's one of Graham's dear friends in Edinburgh, and we landed on what you are looking at on the bottle. And it was crazy, the process of choosing the glass and the corks and the labels and how many labels we wanted and getting them printed and TTB approval and the whole 9 yards. It's definitely a process, but it's a good process. I'm not saying it's bad at all. It's just a good process. And that leads us to, I guess, if I'm following the story in chronological order, leads us to the release of the Warchief, because we fixed everything up. We definitely had a few hiccups along the way. We were going to partner with another company that pulled out a few weeks before we were supposed to release the Warchief, so we had to scramble and figure out what we were going to do, and miraculously we did it, and got everything we needed to get to secure the August 10th, 2023 launch date of the Warchief online. And as they say, the rest is history. Although it's not really history because we're still doing it right now. But I'm going to pour a little bit. As you can see from the episode that I failed to properly record last time, I have a little bit of whiskey left in here. But I'll pour a little bit more just for the sake of the episode. I've probably drank the Warchief more than any single person on planet Earth by like 5 or 6 times. I'm a little biased to it, but it's a 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley mash bill, 7-year bottled and bond bourbon whiskey. For those of you that are listening that don't necessarily know what bottled and bond means, it is essentially just a set of government regulations that they put on whiskey, not just bourbon, but whiskey, in order for it to reflect transparency. When the bottled and bond bill of the 1897, somewhere around that area, I didn't research it beforehand, just going off the top of my head. When that bill was passed, essentially the purpose was to legitimatize the whiskey that was in the bottle, because at the time people were cutting corners in order to make a inferior product look, smell, even taste like whiskey in a way, but it wasn't whiskey, and it was things that were dangerous for humans to consume and not healthy and not safe and just not good. So the Bottled and Bond Act, which was largely enforced by Colonel E.H. Taylor, was a driving force of legislation, maybe the most important piece of legislation, one of them, in the history of American whiskey, to make sure that when you bought a bottle of Bottled and Bond whiskey, henceforth, from that day, what was on the label you could guarantee was not tampered with, and it was exactly what was mentioned, what was said. And it always had a tax strip on the top, which we have on our labels as well for the Bottled and Bond whiskeys. So it's nowadays it's a little bit more of, I don't want to say marketing, because I do believe it still is a sign of quality. I think Bottled and Bond bourbons are usually always good, or Bottled and Bond whiskeys, I should say, because you got Mellow Corn, obviously. That's a corn whiskey, and that's one of the best out there. But it doesn't hold as much weight because there are so many regulations now that the government upholds to make sure, just in terms of the way you market your whiskey. The TTB, which is the governing force of labeling of spirits, they are on it like hounds. They are on each and every release, and I can tell you that from experience. We've had to change the littlest things on our labels in order to comply with the TTB. And that's just the labels. That's not the actual whiskey inside, but there's a whole bunch of different processes. But Bottled and Bond, I believe, still holds a lot of weight today. I think it's a sign of respect for what has for the past in whiskey making. I think it's a sign of some sort of quality and assurance of whiskey that is made with care and love and attention to detail. But it absolutely does not hold as much weight as it did, let's say, 125 years ago. You know, there are so many more regulations these days, which is great, which is absolutely great. But, we wanted to create that Bottled and Bond bourbon for our first whiskey, and that's what we did. So a 75-21-4 mash bill here that we do source from MGP, specific lot of barrels that go in. We dump them all at the same time, bottle them all up, proof it down to 100 proof, do the whole thing. The Warchief, already explained that. You can see the signet here at the top. You might not be able to see it directly on YouTube, maybe not, I don't know. But if you look on our website or look on a bottle, there's a little Scotsman Stream of America signet that represents the forging of Scottish and American heritage with the forging of the American eagle and the Scottish lion, which is a complete credit to Emma Quinn, our designer, for producing that for us. That was something I think is the coolest thing about our bottle, to be completely honest. I think that signet is the epitome of McTavish Spirits. I just think it rules. But in terms of a little bit of a review here, and then as I'm reviewing it, we'll talk about what Who Gives a Dram wants to be moving forward and what I want it to be. But I've always thought on the nose here, musty corn, a little bit of darker, like sugary notes, vanilla. That oak really comes through on the nose of the Warchief. One of the reasons we selected it. The guys at the Bourbon Life podcast, who are great friends of mine, reviewed the Warchief with Graham on the show, and they had mentioned that the nose in particular reminds them of a, quote, dusty bourbon. And for those in the whiskey industry, you know what that means, but for those that are not, a dusty bourbon essentially just refers to an old whiskey from the 60s, 70s, or 80s, and kind of just correlates with high quality, if you want to boil it down to its simplest form. And, when I think dusty bourbon, I think, again, a very typical bourbon, musty corn, oak forward, vanilla sweet forward note, and that's what I get on the Warchief. I think that it's a very bourbony bourbon. It's very nose heavy corn forward and vanilla, a little bit of a cinnamon on there, a little bit of a rye influence on the nose, but that will translate to the palate much more than it does to the nose of the whiskey. So, all right, I'm going to take a sip, even though I already know what I'm going to taste, but I am not going to say no to drinking the Warchief, and nor should you. Yeah, it's the reason we love the Warchief is because of that mid to back palate that you get. The front of the palate, and that, I hate the word mouthfeel, but what you get as soon as it coats your tongue is a burst of that corn, vanilla, almost like a butterscotch note, maybe like a dark caramel, something like that. Again, sitting in a barrel for 7 years, so there's a lot of influence of the wood sugars that are imparting itself into the liquid as it ages. But the mid to back palate to me is where this becomes a beautiful, beautiful bourbon. And what I get is an influx of those dark fruits and cinnamon spices and peppery spices that are directly correlated with the 21% rye mash bill of this bourbon. It is almost like a dark cherry Coke to me. Graham likens it to what he calls Christmas in a glass, which is, I think, a great note, because I can see that dark fruit cake, kind of the dark stone fruit in here that is reminiscent of a Christmas fruit cake maybe, and that's what makes whiskey awesome, by the way. Not to go on a tangent, but what makes whiskey awesome is that there is no right or wrong answer as to what you are tasting, what you're not tasting. What you taste could be completely different than what I taste, and I can't say you're wrong. There's no right or wrong answer. Your experiences, a lot of the senses of taste and smell are correlated to past experiences. That, you could smell what I think is like a cinnamon, but you get more of a different type of spice or something else entirely. I could smell leather, and you could smell something a bit more earthy, depending on your experience and your life experience and how you grew up, and a mirage of different types of scenarios that are, again, not right or wrong. There's no right or wrong answer in the whiskey space, and that's why I love whiskey. My favorite part of when we go out and do tastings of McTavish Spirits is doing the tasting and hearing people for the first time, whether they're drinking it for the first time or it's their first time drinking it guided by me and Graham, going out and hearing them talk about it and really analyzing it and what they're getting, because it's always different, and it's just fun, I think, to listen to it. But nevertheless, where was I going? I don't even remember where I was going with that. That's the problem, doing this by myself, trying to figure out how to prevent dead space on the mic. Yeah, that's what I get on the Warchief. I think that, we've won several gold medals for this. I believe 5. We were ranked the 18th best whiskey 2023 by our friend Fred Minnick, and I think that it's a well-deserving bourbon, and I'm proud that this is our flagship. I'm proud that this is what we are offering as the Warchief, as our first release, as our 7-year bottled and bond bourbon. That being said, who gives a dram in terms of the podcast? Before I wrap this up, what are we going to do here? What is the goal? What should you guys expect from the podcast? And the answer is, I'm not entirely too sure, but I want to get back to my whiskey roots, and I want to go back to hopefully doing as close to a weekly episodic series as I can. Because there's always things to talk about in the whiskey industry. I still watch movies. I still love movies, especially spooky movies. I still watch MMA. I still do all that stuff, but I really am, the older I get and now that I'm in the business, I'm just obsessed with whiskey, more so than I've ever been in my entire life. And I would really just like to discuss that. So what I think I'm going to do moving forward is I like to do a little whiskey review. So today I'm selfishly doing my own whiskey, but I think I'd like to do other whiskeys in the future and give my honest take on them and what I think is great about it. Maybe some things that I don't think is quite great about it, or maybe give a little bit of history on the bottle as well, and maybe do bottles that we've done in the past, because we've done several hundred episodes or over 100 episodes. So maybe go and revisit a whiskey that I've reviewed in the past several years and see how it's changed, or just give my updated takes on it. Maybe talk about whiskey news as well. I was thinking of doing like a weekly whiskey roundup, something like that, where there's always a few big headlines that happen each week, and maybe we can discuss that on the podcast before we get into the actual review. But I also would really like to incorporate things that you guys want to hear me talk about. So, if you follow me on Instagram, Connor_whiskey, I want you to shoot me ideas of what you would like me to talk about on the podcast, and topics that you want to hear directly from me, because I'm in a pretty unique situation in this time of my life as a young man, a 28-year-old, running a whiskey company, owning a whiskey company with Dram. It has provided me with a unique perspective on a lot of things. And I've definitely gone through a lot of things in the past 2 years. And maybe this can be a way for people to ask about, how to start a brand, or how to get into whiskey, or things like that just maybe potentially you as a listener want to know. So I'll provide that on my Instagram every week. I'll field some topics, and whichever one speaks to me the most at that time, I will incorporate into the episode. And I think that's kind of how I want this Who Gives a Dram to go. I'm gonna have a lot of guests on still, whether it's in person or on online. There are so many people that I want to talk to still, many of whom have been on the podcast already, many of whom have not. So I would really like to start, having more guests on. And I just want this to become something that it was in the past. I view Who Gives a Dram as a stress relief for me. This is just a long form way for me to get things off my chest and to speak and to actually verbalize things that I'm thinking, even though I'm sitting here by myself. And I'm thankful that I have people like you guys, the listeners, that actually give a crap about what I have to say and follow along on the journey with me. So I think I'm going to end it there. It's a little bit shorter of an episode, but we're going to be back. So make sure, if you want to buy McTavish Spirits, go to our website, McTavishSpirits.com. You can buy the Warchief. We ship to about 46 states, I believe. You can buy it for $74.99 on our website, plus $20 shipping, which I know is a lot, but nothing I can do about that. We recently re-released our Legacy Series 1 on Sealbox. So we partnered with Sealbox to drop a limited amount of Legacy Series on there. And if you go onto their website, just search McTavish Spirits, you'll see it. We sell it for $79.99 on Sealbox. And I know they'd have barely any left. Maybe a few dozen bottles. Maybe. So, we'll go on there to buy that, and follow McTavish Spirits on all social medias. We're extremely active on there. Reach out to us on there. I'm Connor_whiskey on Instagram and on X and on TikTok. Shoot me a message on Instagram if you want to get in contact with me. The easiest way to do so. But I will end by saying that I am very excited and humbled that I can continue to do Who Gives a Dram. I don't think I'd be sitting here in the position that I am without Who Gives a Dram, which was just started on a whim because I wanted to learn more about whiskey. So if that tells you anything, it should tell you go start start that business, start that dream of yours, because I did with whiskey, and now I'm sitting here. So thank you for joining this week's episode. Thank you for listening to me yap for a little bit. We'll be back next week. And always remember, whiskey's the water of life. So let's start living.